you have this day that motivates you to go out and see if there's something happening out there. But you don't need it. Besides that, you got that this personal feeling, like the dogs do, like the owner's gonna come home. Tell me about these two combined forces that took you out that night.
It's as I say, it's like one of those things in life where you feel like the phone's going to ring, or before it does, and someone's going to ring, or you think of somebody and they ring, or everybody experiences this stuff, and sometimes it's just a bit stronger than that, or there's a really overwhelming sense like got to do something or got to go somewhere. And that day, I woke up the day before on the 6th. I was staying in a caravan about 8 miles south of Alton Barnes, and I woke up about it was about 3:30 in the morning or something like that. I couldn't go back to sleep. I laid there and eventually I got up and had a piece of toast and a cup of tea, and it gets light before the sun comes up, like 4 o'clock in the morning in the summertime in England. So the light was coming up and the birds were singing, and I was standing on this beautiful campsite. So I just went outside and sat there watching the kind of day start to begin, and did a bit of Tai Chi, and then thought, I'll have a drive round. I'm up, right? And I'll have a drive round, see if there's been any crop circles in the night. So I jump in my car, drive around. Obviously, you head for Eastfield, Napier, Walton Barnes with the hotspots for crop circles. Go around Silbury Hill, can't see anything, drive back down through Honey Street, look down at Eastfield again, there's no formations. Go back to the caravan, go back to sleep.
This field is the same field that very famous formation appeared in the 90s?
That's right, yeah. Eastfield's the most famous field for crop circles because of the 1990 formation, really, and because it's had formations prolifically throughout the crop circle.
How was the atmosphere when this circles?
In 1990?
Yeah.
That's the one that sort of told the world about crop circles. I mean, the crop circles have been happening for years, and they've been periodically on the news. People thought alien crafts were landing and leaving 5 spots in the wheat, right, and all that sort of stuff. But when this pictogram came, it changed so much, because the theories after a while were like that the crop circles were being made by weather vortexes, right, and plasma vortexes. There was a Japanese guy who did some tests with plasma and was bouncing around in some laboratory and saying that's what's doing the crop circles. There was a weatherman called Dr. Terence Mead, a meteorologist called Dr. Terence Meaden, who wrote a book saying that meteorologically this is wind turning the crops down and all the rest of it. But then when you start to get pictograms, big long one like the 1990 formation that's got these keys sticking out of it and these things on the side and all of that, that's clearly not weather. And it's if it's plasma vortexes, then it's something that's a little bit more than random to make this pattern. So it went worldwide. Within 24 hours, they had news crews and press crews and film crews and helicopters flying over, and there were people selling T-shirts and books and ice cream vans, and the whole of these little country lanes in Wiltshire became jam-packed with cars. There's a great photo of this road that goes up in between Eastfield and Milk Hill, that's just lined with cars and people standing on the roofs of cars trying to look down into Eastfield, and policemen were just walking up and handing out tickets and nobody could move. It was chaos. So that's the background to Eastfield and where it all began. In terms of the kind of next, it was where the next level of it began, I should say, of something that woke the world up in a way that really drew a lot of attention. So then obviously after Doug and Dave and all of that, then down went the public attention, and for many years the crop circles have proceeded along, largely considered to be the products of 2 old guys, right, or other teams of landscape artists, as they call themselves. But for me, as I've said, I've explored the richness of the meaning and the geometry and the sacred geometry, and for me, I've just been happy to go along and look at that and go inside the formations and look at the wonderful lay and the varieties of lay and how perfect they are and how wonderful they get, clever and ingenious and creative they are. I've stuck with that. And I've also stuck with the fact that in my own life, as I've said, I've drawn much meaning for it, which has helped me improve myself, as I feel it, to try and be a better human being as best I can. So, coincidences have played a big role, and and intuitions and things like that, they often go wrong, and sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. So 777, I'd had this wake up in the morning, driven around, went back to bed, and then went back, got up about 10:30 and went over to Charlie's Cafe at the Silent Circle, and I'd been going over there every day, hanging out there, meeting people, having conversations. One of the great things about the crop circles is you could get to meet a variety of people, and amongst all the chaos of all the different ideas and all the different opinions, good ideas can come. That's the birthplace of good ideas, actually, is a diversity of people with all these different... it's from that real good ideas come from. So I'm happy to engage in that stuff. And then I was sitting there, and every day I'd gone into Charlie's Cafe, I'd put on Terry Toughness's DVD of Crossovers, because I thought it was a brilliant production, and it was nice to have it on the television in the background. So I used to tell people where Crossovers were and point them out on the map to people who'd come into the cafe, and put this DVD on every day for weeks before that. And then this day I decided I wanted to put on another DVD, and it was Janet Ossebard and Bert Jansson's production about Balls of Light that they've been captured on film around Wiltshire. So I put that on for some reason, and then I went off and was having a conversation with somebody, and I noticed this guy come in. He sort of stood out because he's got these big shoulders, and he was wearing this equally large motorcycle jacket, which made him look like a kind of transformer. As he came in, huge guy, and he went over to the back, and he got really excited. And as he was going out, I said, "Oh, what's the fuss about?" And he said that he just witnessed somebody giving a testimony on the DVD that I'd put on the television. That they'd witnessed an incident with a ball of light 15 years or so ago, and that he'd actually been present for that, but thought that nobody else had witnessed it. And for 15 years he'd been coming back to Wiltshire trying to catch balls of light on cameras, and now he's just seen a film with testimony of somebody else who was there at the time, some guys who were in a van in Knaphill car park, who said they saw and described the thing he saw. So he was rushing out to go and get some money from the cash point because he wanted to buy the DVD. So it was a great story. So later on that day, about 3 o'clock, there was a rumour that came over that there was a crop circle in Eastfield. So I was the first to say, well, I can testify that, if there's a crop circle in Eastfield now, then it wasn't there at 4:30 this morning when I drove past, because I was up really early and felt kind of pulled to drive around. So I left it at that and said, is there any confirmation? And nobody knew anything, so I would carry on a conversation with somebody or whatever. And then about half an hour after that, somebody came over and said that there were helicopters flying over Eastfield. So me and this other guy decided to drive over and check it out. So we drove over to Eastfield. When we get there was a couple, I drove to the bottom of Eastfield, and there was a couple of Dutch women who were in the bottom of Eastfield, but they were standing in what's wind damage. That often wind catches the end of crop and it just makes a mess and goes along, and you've just got this flattened wheat basically that's just a mess. So they were standing in that, but they were convinced it was a crop circle in a way. I think it was their first time ever, I'm not sure, but they were convinced it was a crop circle because it had elongated nodes. But when wheat lays over because of wind, it doesn't die. And the sun comes up, it will elongate the nodes because the wheat's trying to go back up to the sun. So often these things can be mistaken, do you know what I mean, for what's a genuine, what some people consider to make it an authentic phenomenon is because of the elongated nodes. You've got to be careful sometimes that it's not. So these ladies were considering this. I went in and sort of said to them, no, this can happen, and explained that to them. And then as I was talking to them, two coaches turned up, or sort of minibuses with groups of people in, a couple of tour guides, Janet, and who brings groups over from Holland, and Denny Clark, and all these people got out to investigate if there was a crop circle. So then there was about 25 people standing around, So I remember saying to everybody, you know, oh no, you know, I was just explaining this is wind damage, and everybody, you know, Janet came out and saw it and said wind damage, blah blah blah. We were all talking, and then they said maybe tonight, and I said, well, maybe. I said maybe there'll be one here tonight because I'm going up on Nap Hill tonight and I'm doing a night watch, so that hopefully there'll be one here in the morning. Jokingly, said goodbye, went back into my car, went back to the caravan, had some dinner. I remember my mum lived locally, so I went out to dinner with her, and I was in the local pub until about 9:30. And then Paula called me, and she said, has there been a crop circle today? So I said, no, not as far as I know. And she said, so I said, why? And she said, well, she'd just been into the village in Cardiff, and there was wheat growing out of the paving stones, which is something she'd never seen before. She lived in this village 40 years, right? There's no farmers around. Cardiff's not known for, you know, the centre of, you know, the city of Glasgow is not known for its wheat production, and yet there was wheat going out of the pavement. She saw this as a bit of a sign and decided, I said to her I was going to do a night watch. She said she was going to get in the car and come down. So I went back to the caravan about 10:30. 11 o'clock, 12, 11:30 or whatever, Paula arrives, right? We have a cup of tea and a chat and, you know, discussing going up and doing the night watch. And 1 o'clock in the morning, get in the car, drive to Nap Hill, get out of the car, it's pitch black. Something a lot of people don't appreciate. There's no street lights, you know, in these farming areas at night. You know, when there's dark, it's dark. And there was a cloud cover, there was, you know, no moon, so it was a dark night. So you get out of the car, we've got a couple of torches which only glare back at you, and we stumble up Nap Hill. Actually, we made a mistake and walked too far and walked around the back by Golden Ball Hill and then come back around the front of Nap Hill. And as we were walking up towards the summit, this transformer guy seems to come forward out of the dim light and see this shadow of these shoulders of this motorbike jacket that I'd seen earlier that day. So I shout out, "Win," and then he told me his name, and walked over to him, and immediately got chatting. He had and noticed that he'd got all these cameras on top of the hill, right? He got this tripod with his camera, and he got this other stuff, and a blanket, and he got his equipment laid out. So he lays a blanket out and says, "Come and join me." So we sit down. So I ask him about all this camera stuff, and he picks his image enhancer camera thing up, right? And he's, "Can I have a look through the screen?" And he waves it all around the field and jiggles it about, and you know, you're looking at it, and it makes it all grey, and you can see the outline of where the tree, you know, the trees go down the middle, and you know, you look around, right? So he does that. We sit down, and then we get engaged in this right cosmic conversation. It turns out he's, you know, a physicist, and he worked for Rolls-Royce, and you know, on their engines. He worked as a fighter pilot and for the RAF. He invented chip and pin technology for the credit cards. He's worked in music copyright protection technology that's been revolutionary. You know, he's invented this wind turbine that's, you know, amazing. He's a right scientist, right? And ever since he was a kid, he's seen balls of light and UFOs and all these sorts of things, and he's been interested to catch these things on camera. Tells me that 15 years ago, this ball of light he'd seen, he was telling me earlier in the shop, someone else had now witnessed, had made him come back every year with equipment to try and catch balls of light with UFOs. So he tells me he's got a van down in the car park that's got these cameras on the roof and another camera inside, and it's running to videotape that's been recording since 11 o'clock. And we get chatting about really interesting things. You know, he's talking about his kinds of theories, right, about, you know, science and the universe and time and space and all that sort of stuff. And I'm talking about it from a kind of metaphysical chi point of view. I'm involved in martial arts, and I'm very interested in that sort of philosophy. So I'm kind of trying to find metaphorical parallels, because that's all you can do, with what he's saying from a scientific point of view. But the conversation was really great because we were gelling and like it was like we were taking each concept that we were saying and agreeing on in our own kind of terminology to the next level. And it was like, there was a real buzz, you know. And so that went on until about 3 o'clock. It was just after 3 o'clock. There was just this one flash of light. It was just like a camera went off, right? And I remember, because we were sitting on the floor, and I was sort of talking to Win, for that split second that this flash went off, I saw the grass Do you know what I mean? It was just there for a second. It was like, what was that? And we sort of, no, I don't know what it was. And carried on. Then it wasn't long. I remember saying, if something happened, if there's anything down in that field, I'll bet that's when it happened, or something like that. You know what I mean? Because Wing remembered it when he did his interview for Terry, the documentary afterwards. I'd said it. And anyway, we carried on talking about whatever it was we were talking about. But then Wing looked at his watch and said, "Oh, that's 3 o'clock." He said, "I've got to change the tapes over in the van. 4 hours since 11." So he pops off. So me and Paula sit there. And after a couple of minutes, a skylark, this beautiful bird that's got this beautiful call, you hear it so much in fields out in Wiltshire, comes over our head in the dark and sings to us, right? It seems like it's singing to us, no one else around. There's a few cows and a few sheep, I think, lower down. And we just sat there listening to this bird singing in the dark. I've never heard it, never heard them singing in the dark before. And I like to, I'm involved in African drumming, and when you listen intently to this bird's call, it's like playing an African solo master's piece to perfection, but with his tonality. It's amazing. And Paul and I were both involved in African drumming at the time, so we were kind of really appreciating it on another level, do you know what I mean? And anyway, it stopped just before Wing came back up the hill, and I remember saying to Paula, and this is like a personal evolutionary moment for me, do you know what I mean? I remember saying, "Do you know what, I don't care if there's anything in that field now, because that was enough for me." It really was, do you know what I mean? And that sounds like soppy and sentimental and all that, but like, I'd had so many coincidences and so many different things that happened, and so much, man. It was enough. It was enough. It was enough. So then Wing comes up the hill and he sits down, and I don't know, a couple of minutes went by. And it was quiet for a while. We were just looking at the field. And it was like I was straining with my eyes. It was like I could see a shadow, or it was like I could feel something. Right? I goes, "There's something down there," right? And Wing goes, I'll have a look for you. I'll have a look for the camera." And he gets up and he opens this viewfinder, and I'm in a sleeping bag with a blanket round me, right, and Paula's wrapped up because it's like top of the hill, right, and it's windy. It's been windy all night. When I hat on, and he goes, "You got to get up and look at this." And it was funny, right? My reaction at the time was like, "What is it? Do you know what I mean? Don't get me out of this warm place for nothing. And what is it? Is it some fire?" I don't know. I just like, it was like I was angry, or like, not angry, but I didn't want to be bothered. Do you know what I mean? And he goes, "No, you really got to get up and look at this." So I was like, "Okay." And I was like getting up, like, I don't want to. Do you know what I mean? Like a kid. It was weird. So we get up and then look through this lens, right? Like the clip out of the viewfinder. And all we saw was this big circles getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and we just waved this camera across, and it just went like this. And I couldn't take it in, do you know what I mean? It's like, and then he waved it back, and then I just started, "Ah!" And it was like, my first impression was like the Julia set in 1996 that came down opposite Stonehenge. There was just these circles that got smaller and smaller and smaller, like a kind of fractal. We were just singing that, we were just dancing, cheering, and when we looked round with our eyes, we still couldn't see anything in the field, do you know what I mean? It was just only through the lens of this camera, we could see it. We kept looking and, what was this? We knew, do you know what I mean? It was huge, we couldn't see all of it, it went over this hill, right? I don't know, it's like...
So in the scene, when the lights, when the flash of light happened, you, Paula, and Winston could feel it, right? See it or feel it.
The flash?
Yeah.
Yeah, we all saw it. Yeah, we all saw it. It was picked up on the
Three
camera.
of you guys.
Yeah, we all saw it, and the cameras that were recording down in Wynn's van,
Yeah.
they picked it up. Right?
Yeah.
When you watch the clip of the documentary that Terry made, he took the footage from Wynn's cameras, right, 2 of them, so they corresponded with each other in time frame and everything, right? That's what you've got to remember. There were 2 sets of video recorders, right, that were running simultaneously with 2 cameras on the roof, one on the roof and one on inside, right? And they went down to stupid low lux light levels, and they were infrared CCTV things, so they were like the most sensitive cameras you could get. And they were both recording. So when this flash went off, both tapes recorded a 3.5 millisecond EM pulse, like an electromagnetic pulse, something that just sort of put a static across it, just went bzz, for this really short space time. But when it was slowed down, and
Like a
frame by
lightning
frame,
Like a lightning bolt.
it was like a sheet lightning, like the whole sky just went. Anyway, these tapes correspond that happened, that flash happened. So, but we don't know whether that was the cause of the crop circle. I know Wynn did some analysis and done frame by frame stuff, and you can kind of see it coming up and whatever. But as far as I'm concerned, man, it was huge. It was the most intricate thing to put down, and nobody, in my opinion, could have gone in that field and put that down in 2 weeks properly, let alone 2 days, especially not creating the lay that was in it when I finally walked in it at 4:30. It was just halfway up the stems, and every footstep we took, it just crackled. It was charged. It was just crack, all this static. It was crackling like we were walking on liquid nitrogen. It had been poured over the whole crop, and it was frozen, and we were just crunching it. It was, and then all these little grape shots on the side with these swirls that come up halfway, and there's no way people came in that field in the darkness after 11 o'clock when he was recording and made that. Because when we did the scan, the sweep at 1:35 as well, there's no way in an hour and 45 minutes at 3:20 when the cameras finally picked it up before we did. Because when after the flash, 7 minutes after the flash, the cameras in the van had it. There was enough light for them to get it. So it's like, but we didn't see it till about 3:40 when I felt it, and then Wynn put the camera on, and then we had to wait for the sun to come up, start to come and bring light about 5 to 4, 4 o'clock, whatever it was, 10 past 4, I can't bloody remember. We jump in the car, right, say to Wynn, keep recording, mate, we're going to drive down there and we're going to walk in it, get us going in. He was waiting for his girlfriend, he called his girlfriend excitedly, who decided not to come out that night, stayed in the B&B. He called her up and said, you've got to get down here, so she jumped in the car and he was waiting for her. Meanwhile, we got down there, parked the car in the car park, walked straight up the tram line, mate, and got charged up, and we went in there, it zapped us.
And how does it feel to be witnessing and be walking, it's like you Armstrong, man. There's the moon and you're walking. You're the first man walking over it.
You see, on the one hand, right, I am totally humbled by the fact that I was given the complete blessing to be present for that, right? Because, you know, it's just a miracle, right? As far as I'm concerned. So if I look at it like that, as I do, then I'm completely blessed to have had that experience. Thank you very much. On the other hand, because of my affection for the fact that I think that there's a really, really important thing going on with the crop circles, I really, really believe that this is an important time for humanity, and I really think that, you know, everybody agrees that we could be doing better, and I believe that this is connected to our transformation, our potential transformation as a species on this planet, and how we organise ourselves and what we do and how responsible we are and so on. And so the other side, the dark side of that experience, has obviously been the people that have come out and said, I made it, I lied, we made it up, that people made it in front of us and we're just too stupid to have realised. The cameras couldn't see, you know, they did it in the dark and all of that. And it's largely been dismissed. We did a press conference It only went in the local newspapers. A few people wrote about it. Most people wrote that there goes another controversy, right? It's not proof. We haven't got it on camera. We haven't got it, it hasn't, even though all the footage and our testimony showed that there was no way this could happen in the time frame, it seems that because there wasn't footage of a UFO coming down, or some bright light coming down that lit up the whole field, that weaved all the wheat, and there were, 10 scientists around at the time with their clipboards who could, whatever all the parameters here, right? But 3 ordinary, regular people, a scientist actually in Wynn, a guy that's supposed to be credible, and authenticated camera footage, which shows that the field was monitored from 11 o'clock right through the evening, and the crop circle wasn't there the day before, and it was there the night. And when you consider how long it would take to construct something of that nature, and to have done it under the conditions that they were done under, and to have contained the wheat, laid the wheat down in such a fantastic way, then that's just boggles my mind. And then you look at an ordinary geezer, right, that was, strung out, burnt out lawyer, marriage over, bounces into crop circles, thinks there's something going on, sticks around for 10 years and pays some attention and reads a few books on sacred geometry and scratches his head, walks up on a hill, flash a light, crop circle, it's all too big, right? People can't believe it. So there's all these stories that come out. So you get this personal challenge, right? Because you're kind of saddened that someone can't share in the joy of this fucking miracle. You can't share it. Because everyone's going, no, it can't be real, it can't be real, it can't be real, you must be crazy. Or you must be this, or you must be that. Now, as a lesson, paradoxically, as a lesson for yourself, right? You hold on to something for yourself and become confident in yourself. No, that happened, these are the facts. You haven't listened to the facts, you've heard this third-hand story, or you've heard that one. To try and build a barrier around yourself to protect yourself against that, but at the same time, not want to separate yourself from these people and understand that we all have to be sceptical, we're all afraid to know if this could be real, or if we're being conned, or if we're being this, or if we're being that. To understand that that's okay.
You think you could be called to be there, like you 3 guys were meant to be there, like
Definitely. It was like there's two synchronistic.
Like the phenomenon, if even before it happens, it attracts.
Yes. Yeah.
And that actually attracts. Like choose who's going to be there.
Yeah. I mean, I've said not so publicly, but I've said more privately that I believe that there's been an interaction with me and whatever it is that's creating the crop circles, and I've always said I don't know what that is, but I felt a kind of sense that because of the coincidences, because of the synchronicities, because of and this all involves coincidence, when these numbers I told you about, 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 and squaring the circle and the earth and the moon, it's all coincidences. How can Venus be the same as the musical scale? Coincidence after coincidence, which science disregards, right? They say if things happen in coincidence, now they're just merely a coincidence. We need to prove stuff in isolation. We just need to take one thing and prove our theory about that. If all these things happen in a coincidence, that doesn't mean anything. But it does. Especially when you encounter coincidences in your life so rapidly. What made me wake up at 3:30? What made me drive past these fields? What made me put that DVD on and tell Wynn? And Wynn comes in and sees this, testimony of somebody from 15 years ago that's made him come there for 15 years. I introduce myself to him and encounter him. What made me go back over there at 3:30 and say I'm going to come back later and hopefully... I don't know. But it just felt like someone was playing a game with me if I look at it in one way. Do you know what I mean? Someone's going, ha ha ha, I'm leaving you around and you're going to come here and I'm drawing you in. And Wynn, right, had been around that day looking for a place to go and do his night watch. He hadn't settled on that hill. And the only reason that he stayed there was because he had this dog, right, this big wolfhound blue. And it went crazy when he got to Nap Hill car park. He said he acted so excitedly, it made his mind up. He said, I felt an energy around that area. And he said, the dog confirmed it for me. I'm staying here tonight, Nap Hill. So there was just this something. This, do you know what I mean? And you look at it, I mean, I know your mind kind of, they say your mind sort of looks for these patterns and says, oh yeah, but it's happened too many times. It's happened too many times in the last 14 years that I just feel like the lessons have always, if I've accepted the humility of how stupid I am, oftenly, that's bad. If I accept how often I can be stupid with my theories about this or theories about that, and accept various things with humility, it seems that the coincidences get stronger, or they got stronger, and they just. So I think that the coincidence of me coming from the metaphysical point of view, this kind of looking at it from the indivisible side, the side of matter that we can't see, touch, taste of, and Wynne coming at it from a completely material point of view as a scientist and gathering data and having these theories about time and space in this context from a material point of view is even more sort of like poetic, really, of the fact that we didn't have an argument or fight together as if we were opposites. We found common metaphors in our language, in our meta-language, which each of us found acceptable. And so there was this wonderful kind of harmony to our conversation, which all just seemed to fit with the birds singing and the crop circle coming and me saying, oh, I don't care, it was a crop circle. What else can I tell you, mate?
5-minute break. Talk to Phoenix. Right?
That's the best and the most I've ever said about that. You got the best fucking interview on 777 ever, bro.
I know that. Thank you.
There was emotion.
Yeah, class. I was.